Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we kick off our virtual coffee chat series. Before we get started for today's discussion, I just wanted to share a few virtual housekeeping items. Just as a reminder, this video is being recorded, and so we will be able to share this out to each of you once we're finished today. Please use the chat feature to submit any questions that you may have. Our panelists will answer them if we have time. However, if we do not have any time, we will be sure to send a follow-up email to address your very specific question. So to get us started, this session will feature two of ASU's top career services leaders at the university. Cindy Parnell, Executive Director for Career and Professional Development Services, and Sharon Irwin-Fulin, Executive Director of WP Carey Career Management and Employer Engagement. They both have extensive knowledge of and longevity in the field of university career services. And today, we'll be privileged to hear their thoughts on recruiting during these uncertain times, how to stay connected to the university, and how we are here to offer guidance and support. So before we kick off our discussion, Cindy, I'm going to ask you to do a brief introduction of yourself, and then Sharon, I'm actually going to ask you to do the same after Cindy.
That's great. Hi, everybody. This is fantastic. I see so many familiar faces and some newer, friendly faces. Thank you for joining us. This is great. And I think more than we were expecting, I think just shows what a critical point we're in and timely conversation to be having. So thank you for joining us. My name is Cindy Parnell, and I serve as Executive Director for Career and Professional Development Services. I've been with ASU for over 13 years now, and my entire career at ASU has been in career services. So a lot of what maybe we'll talk about today too is the differences between 2008 to where we are today and how recruiting has critically changed now that we are all trying to figure out work in this new environment while we're sitting in a global pandemic. I love career services. I started in employer relations, and so this is true to my heart. I'm glad that you're here, and I look forward to our conversation. And Sharon, you're a great partner. We always have a good time connecting, so hopefully this will be thought-provoking, a little bit of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Cindy. So it's so nice to meet all of you virtually. I have been at WP Carey, which is the business school at ASU, now for exactly a year and 13 days. Today is my anniversary. So it's nice to be here. Like Cindy, I have a longstanding relationship with the business of University Career Services. Our team is the Career Management and Employer Engagement team, and I'm coming in from Canada. So Canada's top business school is the Ivy Business School, and it was there that we built, through those rogue years from 1998 to 2018, a practice in Canada that was very focused on the employer as the ultimate client. So I think probably what you'll see with both Cindy and I is it is a bias we lead to, and we certainly believe that the student is an important part and why you continue to come. And hopefully today will help you figure out through this crazy time what best practices are, given that both Cindy and I lived through the last recession, which was not so long ago in 2008.
All right, thank you for that, ladies. So just to kick us off, I just wanted to pose a thought and some response related to a survey we just conducted. Mm-hmm. So we recently surveyed recently surveyed all of our employers and had about 174 respondents. And we found that about half of them are actually still deciding on what their full-time offers will look like for the fall. Similarly, we found that about half of the respondents were also undecided about summer internships. While this is great information for us to have as career centers, what impact do you see this having for employers who may actually be in the same situation?
Yeah, Sharon, maybe I can jump in here. So the time of uncertainty allows us to take time to pause to create and reimagine, I think, what let's even start with traditional internships. What traditional internships have been, I think this is really nudging us off that tipping point to redesign what internships can look like and bring in that talent pipeline to companies in various ways. Some of our employers are telling us that they're hitting pause on internships, but also some of our employers are telling us they're converting them to virtual or remote work internships. And that's something we really want to encourage our employer partners. Maybe it's not going to be the traditional 10 or 12-week full-time or even part-time internship, but where there is space to be able to create shortened internships, or maybe even what we're calling micro internships, taking internships and building out little smaller chunks of projects that students or groups of students can work on in a virtual or remote capacity. That is something that I know our faculty members and our students would definitely be drawn to, and something that we want to encourage our employers to do. We've put together a virtual internship guide as well that I know Courtney is going to be sending out to all participants today to kind of highlight what are the different things to consider when designing a virtual internship, because we really do think this is going to be that nudge to move employers and to move our students thinking into more of the remote work and smaller chunks of projects and even case study work that can happen, integrated even into courses or something that's standalone that the student can produce on their own.
I think that Cindy makes a great point. If we think about the goals of what internships are for the student, it's certainly in some cases or many cases, certainly the money, but there's these other two pieces, which is the academic experience and the just general experience. So I believe that much like 2008, when firms thought about this from the perspective of employment branding,
I think we have a little bit of a technology error. Cindy, I'd be curious to know from 2008, your perspective, just how this has maybe looked similar in nature, or maybe even a little bit different since we now have that virtual component.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in terms of the differences between, or maybe the similarities too?
Yeah. So I think in 2008, we had a little bit more time. Not much time, but I think with COVID-19, it was literally the switch flipped overnight. Back in 2008, I remember having a board meeting with our employers in October of 2008. And our board members were sharing with us, Cindy and team, we're looking like we're going to need to hit pause on a few things, or we got some hints that offers weren't going to be made in the fall. They were going to be kind of pushed down a ways. And that bought employers a little bit more time. And so the thing that I think worked really well, and it stays true today with the situation we're in now, is that employers, we want you to stay engaged. And if that's not necessarily through really robust recruiting efforts, be with us and stay with us alongside us in developing and teaching and coaching our students. There are spaces for employers to come in and to teach, workshop topics. Our team is going into faculty classrooms and we're teaching professional development themes and topics day in, day out. How amazing would it be if employers, we invited you in to be co-teach leads with us? Faculty love that. Students, they believe you more than they believe us. And when they hear it from somebody who ultimately could make a hiring decision, their ear rings differently to listening and picking up your advice and your coaching. I think the differences for where we are now, a couple of things stand out. One, technologies. Clearly, we're all on a platform right now that didn't even exist then. And virtual education, even virtual recruiting, virtual career fairs. Hi, Sharon, did you make it back?
I made it back. Thanks, Cindy. Keep going. You sound great.
I think the ability to really leverage the technology platforms that exist, create all new different ways for students to engage with you, to learn from you, to create with you. And I think the second difference from 2008 to where we are today are our students. This is probably the most prepared and ready and well-positioned traditional age group, right, of traditional college age students ready to launch into this virtual, into this remote type setting. So if there's ever a time that's best to redesign and recreate what recruiting and engagement and hiring looks like. This is the student demographic that's certainly going to respond very, very well to it. Sharon, welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So if we were to think about, just before we jump through, Courtney, with your question, I think where we can help, I'm not sure if you covered this already, Cindy, the idea of helping our employer partners think about what would the structure look like? How do you mentor students through this change as part of skilling them up, but also as part of your employment branding, where students will come to understand that you were an employer who developed them at this pivotal time in all that's happening in the world.
Great, thank you. So I want to talk a little bit too about, Cindy, you had mentioned how employers get engaged, how they stay engaged, and talk a little bit about what this might look like in terms of a virtual setting, and how they can actually get engaged in that space. And then transition a little bit about how virtual internships might work, and how they can actually advocate with their leadership in that space. Maybe some of them are making a decision about that, and it's maybe not, they're not the ones that are able to make that decision. So what are some pivotal talking points that they can actually bring to their leaders or their management team about why they should consider virtual internships? And then if you wanted to touch upon a little bit about the how, but I know that we have a virtual internship guide that can support them in that how piece. So I think the why is probably the most important piece of the discussion.
And I think virtual internships is just one component of that. That just seems to be kind of top of mind for our students right now. That's what we're hearing, just with summer approaching in Arizona very quickly. Our students graduate in 5 weeks, and then summer courses and summer internships start very quickly. So that's very much top of mind. But originally, I think your first question to Courtney was around what are other opportunities for employers to engage in a virtual setting. And so let me kind of go through some of those, because if recruiting and hiring isn't something right now in the short term that can be a focus for you and your organization, again, we want you engaged alongside our students. And it's really important, to Sharon's point, that brand, your organization or your company's brand with our students, they pay attention and they remember who stuck with them, who helped to develop them, who helped to coach them. So even things like setting up open houses on Zoom calls like this that allow for students or candidates to come in and to ask questions and almost do that virtual type of informational interview. And if you have alumni, if you have ASU alumni in your company, or if you have young college, new college grads, maybe 1 to 5 years out, that can be on a panel and be there during open hours to allow for students to ask questions about the organization or even about their job search process to go into your organization. Those are really great opportunities to still stay connected with students. I will say our student clubs and organizations are still very, very active in the virtual space. And so there are ways for you to connect with student club and organization leaders and their faculty advisors to bring professional development content to them and support their organizations that way. And that way you get a large number of students at one time, maybe presenting at one of their upcoming meetings. And they do meet over the summer. They're getting really savvy with the technology and wanting to stay in this community environment. So we look to see that probably be sustained through the summer. Things like virtual career fairs will become a norm at ASU, and not that the physical ones, when things do open up, go completely away, but this hybrid of both physical space and virtual space is going to be the norm. Things like interviewing, right? Your candidate interviews, maybe you're not going to be coming on to do interviews. So as you know your technologies that you're going to be using with candidates, let career center partners know, so then we can be working with students, training them and having them practice within those same type of platforms so that they're prepared candidates and best candidates for you. Sharon, I'm gonna pause there since I've done a lot of the talking and let you pick up on the hints and tips to be able to connect with managers about how to stay connected virtually. Yep. And even reimagine what internships can look like.
So I want to pick up on what Courtney said, which was giving you some speaking points as employers. So the idea, I want to just go a little further on the idea of employment branding. So certainly this is a generation that has a bias to feeling like you're developing them and you understand where they're at. I think in the communications piece, being transparent with them about where you're at, finding interesting ways for them to engage with you, Cindy's point about the idea of doing a panel with alumni, etc. We can help you at WP Carey, for those of you who are looking for business school students, think about not only why the employment brand, which I think is the ultimate piece we're trying to get to, thinking about what this is going to look like after, but secondarily, how. So what are the ways that you as an organization can signal to the student, we're thinking about you, we're thinking about what's going on in the world, we're here to help and support you, so that when it comes time and we're all looking down the pipe at the talent, the students are remembering you as that organization that helped them skill up, that helped them understand what was going on and make sense of it, and not frankly feel helpless. Because as you can imagine, these guys are, what we're getting back from the coaches is that the students are feeling pretty distressed and distraught and not knowing what's happening. Not that any of us do either, but it's the idea that, Cindy and I lived through 2008. I also lived through 2001 after the Twin Towers fell. We've lived through this, and what's remarkable is that a lot of the solutions in the world might actually come from business. So my last point on the how might be that what if you thought about the internship as less about work or gigs or all those things or special projects that Cindy talked about, which are all super valuable. But once we get to the other side of this thing, I think there's going to also be some social mechanisms or organizations, that your organization might be partnered with. And it might be an amazing way for you to invite students, those high potential students, into the fold to do a volunteer day with you. Or there's ultimately other ways that what I want to leave you with in all my circuitous chatting is that this is an opportunity for you to signal to the student that you care about them, you develop your people, and you care about the context you're operating in.
Great, thank you. So to pivot a little bit with the small amount of time that we have left, I want to talk about our students, because that's the reason we're here, right? Is to make sure that our students have opportunities post-graduation. So I want to talk about specifically what we are doing currently. We've all been asked to pivot to this virtual space. And so I want to talk about what we are currently doing to prepare our students for these opportunities, especially with this kind of new norm that we live in. How are we setting them up for success to make sure that they're ready for those opportunities once they graduate? Or even if they're taking internships, how do we prepare them for those?
Yeah. This is also where I would welcome any employers, recruiters, your comments too on advice to be giving to students. Our career readiness team, our career specialists have gone above and beyond. I mean, even as simple as extending our hours made available to students and alumni during this time. We have longer operating hours to be available, and even creating things in a virtual space for students at any time when they're ready to go through what we call on-demand appointments. So if during our extended hours, they happen to miss us, they're still able to get content and go through an experience in a remote setting that gives them advice based on the things that they need point in time. I think right now, the advice we're giving to students too is, this is not forever. This is for now, but the things that you have control over, these are the things that we want you to work on, we want you to develop. So things like their digital presence, things like we're a handshake school, things like their handshake profiles, their LinkedIn profiles. We want them to upskill. If they're still job searching, they're starting their job search and they're noticing positions that they're drawn to, but maybe they're missing a credential or need to gain a skill set, things like LinkedIn Learning, or now even ASU has created an entire platform called ASU for You, which has micro learning and credentialing that can help the student best position themselves to be a best candidate. Simple things like get your resume ready, practice your interviews in a virtual setting, because it's very different than in an in-person setting. And I know many of you are seeing that come through. Follow companies. So join professional associations, volunteer where it's safe to do so. Those types of things that they have control over to position themselves. So as the doors open and as things start to come in at a greater rate, they are positioned and best prepared to be your best candidates.
And I think to pick
You
up
guys are
on
doing.
what Cindy's saying, to pick up on that, I think there's also a piece here where, you know, we're doing the basics, right? Like we are sending out the same kind of material as Cindy's team is, you know, even how to position yourself for a Zoom meeting, how to dress for a Zoom meeting. You know, there's been lots of jokes about working from in your pajamas, but we want to make sure that the students get that. But thinking about it takes a village to raise a child, our hope would be, again, back to this piece about signaling, if the student is signaling things through their resume and through the volunteer experiences and all these things, even through their demeanor and the way they're engaging with you digitally, because they're so reliant on it now, our hope would be that you'll give them the students feedback, because all we are telling our students the exact same things, but also to expect more feedback from the organizations as we're all trying to work through this.
Sharon, you mentioned mentoring. I think this is a really important place where if you don't have yet hiring back to where it's been in the past, engaging your alumni from ASU, engaging again those newer college grads to come in to ASU's mentor network and position themselves to be mentors and to be available and to coach alongside us. Great point, Sharon.
Okay.
So ladies, if you're open to it, I have a couple of questions to ask, and I'll let either of you decide which one wants to answer it.
We'll do paper, scissors, rock,
specifically speaking to COVID, I am an employer and wondering how you are preparing students for the new hiring market that's upcoming. So you guys talked a little bit about what we're doing in general, but specifically related to, you know, clean bills of health, COVID testing, pieces of that. Are we having any conversations with students around those types of scenarios that they have to be prepared for?
Wow. So we are not at this point. It's a great question. I don't know if Cindy is. At the business school, what we're really trying to focus on is the more strategic that Cindy mentioned, the idea of what's your digital footprint, how are you out in the market, how are you making it easy for organizations to find you through Handshake, through LinkedIn, through your volunteer activities, through your work experience, your micro-credentialing that you're flagging. That's really the work we're doing. How about you, Cindy?
Yeah, no, we're not having those specific conversations, but I can imagine in the next couple of weeks to couple of months, as things change and progress, that may become a part of our talking points with students. What we are talking to students about is how COVID is affecting our employer partners. And that's why these surveys that Courtney's team is putting out to our employers and hearing where you are point in time with your hiring decisions or your internship programs or your new college grad programs are really important, because we use that data. We are very much data informed over data driven, and we share that information in our talking points with our students. Simple things like when we do go back to physical space, things are going to change there. And so I can imagine having conversations and having communication with students and employers about things like, I don't know if we're going to be encouraging shaking of hands. I don't know if we're going to be monitoring numbers of people at a time and phasing them into info sessions or in-person career fairs. So it definitely, like, we're preparing for these types of things because it's going to be different. We have yet to have conversations fully with students about it.
Yeah, I think to Cindy's point, operationally, we know it's going to be a different world, and how we get to coaching them, whether it's COVID testing or whatever it is, we'll love to hear from you, because that'll help inform, to Cindy's point, help inform what we're putting out and spotlighting for the students' benefit.
So what are you hearing from students that they want, need, and are concerned about currently during this time? What are we hearing from students?
They want their opportunities, even if it's in a different format, a different modality. So I think kind of as we started, redesigning how those experiences can still exist for students. The same conversations, even faculty and instructors, about what are different creative ways that we can still have students meet their internship or experiential learning requirements, but doing it in different and creative ways.
And we're also hearing all of that, but we're also hearing about the firms who are doing it well and the firms that could maybe do it better. And so specifically being as transparent as you can. The survey is helpful, to Cindy's point, for us to be able to hold it up and say in the coaching session with the student, this is not unusual, there's a number of firms here. But there's a piece here where what we're hearing about the students' impressions of their potential employer is, I would think, what I'm picking up is that it's directly related to how transparent and communicative you're being. So some of the firms who have gone dark, I would say, is giving more anxiety to the student and having them second guess rather the choice to sign with that organization, versus some of the firms that have gone above and beyond, put the student with an alumni partner who's kept them up to date and on that's going on. That's a way, again, that you can signal really clearly that you care about your talent and that you're thinking about being clear with them as a human being, not only as a new hire.
All right, ladies, we're going to close with our last question. And I want to hear from each of your perspective. Why would an employer choose ASU to recruit from, specifically our students, and why they would be a good fit? And so if they're going to take that response and something that they're going to take to their leadership and their management team to justify recruiting ASU students, what are 2 or 3 things that they could take back to their team?
Yeah. So I love this question, and I think you have such great talent and diverse talent from ASU. They work hard. They've got that grit factor. 70% of ASU students work while going to school. That is a massive percentage. And with that, they're starting to develop those skill sets. They're getting practice. Many of our programs require students to do internships in order to graduate, so they're starting to build those skill sets and get to participate in group work well ahead of graduating. Wall Street Journal named ASU as one of the top 5 universities for developing best qualified grads. And we hear consistently from employers that their ability to work in interdisciplinary teams, to be adaptable, to continually be able to learn. Dr. Crow always says that our students are master learners. For our students to be able to come out of ASU with that drive to be able to continue to learn and to be great contributors is something that I'm very proud of to be able to deliver alongside employer partners.
Yeah, I'd second that. If you told me 2 years ago that I would move across the continent and to a new country, not a chance. And it is the student profile as being lots of grit, scrappy, bright and capable, and that's certainly what we hear from all of you. And then if I want to be really thoughtful about what you're thinking about sitting in the chair as well, talent aside, Cindy and I are very committed to making sure that this is easy for you. Whatever the new reality is, she and I are in close contact. We're talking all the time and building out employer engagement experiences that are innovative, like our reputation says we are, and making it, our intention and goal is to make it easy and thoughtful and aligned with your business needs.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I'm going to give us 2 minutes to hop off and get onto our next Zoom meeting. I know that valuable time in between those next meetings is good at this point. So thank you, Sharon and Cindy, for the conversation today. And for those of you that joined online, thank you for joining us. We'll be sure to share out the actual recording of this so that you have it to share with your teams if necessary. And for those that have asked questions that we didn't get to address, we'll be sure to send follow-up specifically to you with those responses. So again, thank you very much, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks.